have 8 o'clock, so let's get started. Okay, so for the first 45 minutes, what we're going to do is modify the spreadsheet that we had created together a week or so ago. And then following that, then we've got test number 2 covering chapters 11 and 14. Okay, pretty straightforward. All right, so what I want you to do is to pull up the spreadsheet that we jointly created a couple of weeks ago. You can also just pull up the one that I sent you after class via email. Should be the same thing. What you're going to do is take the handout that I gave you this morning, okay? Did you get one of these? Okay. You're going to take this handout, and it's got a little bit of additional information on it than the previous one. So you're going to have to modify, basically, the spreadsheet that we created. You're going to have to insert a couple of different things. Also, purposely built into this, I did not create this. There's a mistake, okay? And I want you to see if you can find the mistake, okay? And it's a significant mistake. And this will sort of separate the A's from the B's and the C's, okay? To see if you can figure it out, all right? Now, with that, let me help guide you a little bit, okay? So, I mean, there's not really a whole lot there's a few things that you're going to need to change. So what I would suggest you do is kind of what I did up here at the very beginning, just so you don't get confused with the previous one. So this is example number 2, and then probably put today's date, okay? That way you can kind of keep them separate and you don't get the one that we created a couple of weeks ago or whenever it was confused with this one. Now, what I did was to, first of all, take and just simply replace the information on the old one with the new information from this one. And so now what you're going to see, and highlighted here in yellow, that's a new piece of information, okay? And so you can go ahead and put that piece of information in there. That's one of the reasons why that I had you skip a couple of lines here and there to be able to kind of insert some things. So in this case, we're going to be inserting our depreciation term. And then you're going to select, depending on whether it's residential or commercial, the appropriate number of years. So what I did, since this is a commercial property, it tells you it's an office building. You're going to put in 39 there. Obviously it was residential, 27 and a half. Okay? So that's the first little modification that you're going to make. So no formula there yet. That's just simply just a simple little input. On the other things, go ahead and match up your numbers to the numbers that I put up here, or once again, what I would do if I were you is I would check off on that sheet of paper to make sure that you've used each of those pieces of information. Okay. I'm sorry? No, absolutely.
That was the only change.
No. There's several changes, but that was the first one. Okay. So the next change, we sort of scroll down the page a little bit. First of all, take a look at what they did with OPEX this time. They modified it a little bit. So this time it's 45% of effective gross income instead of what they had done previously, which was based on gross income. Okay? So now it's 45%. And then the other, they actually added now another other income. You were probably wondering, well, why did he insert that line last time for other income when they didn't have any other income? Well, it was because I knew this was coming and wanted to give you the chance of having that line item in there. So now you're going to insert here, other income, all right? And then that is going to be based, in this case, it tells you, on 8% of the gross rent for each year. Okay, so once again, what we're doing is we're taking the spreadsheet that I had sent to you after our last class session, and we're modifying it to reflect this new problem. Okay, so the next, as I said, the next modification was the other income, and that's going to be 8% of the gross rent for each year. Okay, the next thing that we're changing, or we're adding, I'm sorry, is a growth rate for the resale price. Okay, so what I did was just sort of insert that here. Growth rate for the resale price, 5%. Right now we're not having to do any formulas, we're just simply putting in the new inputs. Okay? The next change in terms of the addition to the spreadsheet were selling expenses. I inserted those here at 8%. Okay? And then for depreciation for year one and thereafter, I've left those blank here because what we are doing is those are no longer givens. They're going to be calculations that you're going to actually have to do using the information provided. So just, you can put zeros in there if you want to. Okay? So just to recap, before we go down to the actual spreadsheet itself, in terms of the actual income, just make sure that you're matching up with everything that I've got from top to bottom. Okay, so 120,000 for the land, 680,000 for the building, depreciation term of 39 years, loan amount 640, interest rate 9%, loan period 20 years with annual payments. Share of the NOI that's going to be part of the participation payment, 20% over 100,000. Share of the appreciation and the resale, 12%. Year one gross rent or PGI, 252,000. And year one OPEX, 45% of EGI, not of the gross rent. And then we insert the new line of other income, which is going to be 8% of the gross rent. And then vacancy rate is given to you of 8%, with the growth rate for the resale price of 5%, growth rate in rent of 5%, growth rate in OPEX 7%. Our selling expenses are going to be 8%. And then, as I said, leave the depreciation for year one and thereafter as 0, because those are now going to be formulas that are going to be embedded down below in the actual spreadsheet.
Where's the OPEX?
The OPEX is simply here. 7% is the growth rate, and the actual OPEX itself is 45% of EGI.
Oh, but there's another growth rate for OPEX in there.
I'm sorry?
Is there a growth rate for OPEX?
There isn't one. That's the difference. This one is now strictly based on the gross, I'm sorry, strictly based on EGI.
Okay, yeah, but it wasn't.
Right, that's my point. There's a modification purposely. Okay? Now, once you've done all of that, okay, then we come down to the actual spreadsheet itself. And let's see if I can blow or condense this down where you get all 5 years on one page. Okay, so if you have put everything in correctly, now you're not going to match up 100% with this because we made a couple of little modifications, all right? So, but for the first 2 lines, if you just put the basic information in there, you should match up with those first 2 lines. Do you? Yes or no?
Oh,
Just those first 2 lines. Potential gross income and vacancy and collection losses. Make sure you're matching up with all 5 years for that. Now, where you should start to not match up is with other income, because we didn't have any other income with the other example, okay? But if you remember, I had you go ahead and add the line in there of just making it 0. Well, in this case, we do have other income, and that other income is simply going to be 8% of the potential gross income. Now, just by sheer coincidence, That's the same percentage as the vacancy and collection losses, okay? So when you see those two numbers being the same all the way across, that's purely coincidence, okay? So don't get yourself worked up about that, all right? So the first thing you're going to need to do is make that little modification to the other income. And the formula that I used was simply taking the potential gross income, which is cell C30, and multiplying it by a fixed cell reference or static cell reference for C18. Okay? And then once you've got that, you should be able to copy it across for all 5 years. Okay, everybody good with that?
You multiply the other income by what?
No, not the other incomes. You multiply it by the potential gross income times the percentage
Oh, right.
allocated to other income.
Okay. And then salary. Static.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So once you've got that, then just, if you've done that correctly, then you should match up with the effective gross income line all the way across. And if you notice, since the vacancy and collection losses was a subtraction and the other income was an addition, they net each other out. So really what ends up happening is your potential gross income ends up being the same as your effective gross income in this particular example, all the way across. So you should match up, once again, should be 306, 307.58. Okay, should be your final year. Okay, all right, everybody good with that? Okay, now, operating expenses. Chances are your first year matches, but your subsequent years do not. Now, figure out why.
Because previously it was a percentage of.
It was a
the
growth
first
rate.
year.
Yeah, what they did was in the previous example that we had done and last week or whenever it was, we had simply taken year one and we had applied a growth rate to that set of operating expenses. In this case, what they're telling you to do, and this is one of those purposeful sort of changes to cause you to have to think about it a little bit, is that you're basically doing what? You're just simply taking a percentage of your effective gross income across the page. So in the case of the formula, you're simply multiplying, in this case, the C30 times the C17, which is the percentage of the 45%, I think it is. And what you're able to do is if you static cell reference the C17 and then leave the C30 as a dynamic cell reference, you should just be able to copy over, okay, and replace all of those. And if you do, you should match up with my numbers. So if we kind of look at what the formula is here for year 5, you see all it is simply taking, in this case, the gross income times cell C17. Now, actually, let me just double check. We actually, okay, let me back up. Okay, what this actually should be, I just realized this just now, is it really should be the effective gross income, which is C33. Same thing, because in this case the numbers are the same. Okay, we would make that little modification. Okay. So it won't change anything, but you need to change that in the sense that it should be cell C33 times C17, because in the problem they are saying this time to use effective gross income instead of gross income for the calculation. Yep.
I was actually, because I mean, you have your growth rate in OPEX 7%, and the growth rate is actually 5%. So the growth rate grows at 5%.
growth to raise for the operating expense. They don't give you growth, right?
It's the same.
Think about it like if
Yeah.
it's a percentage of your growth rate and your growth. It's a ratio, like so if
Right.
growth rate is growing at 5%, that means your operating expenses have to be growing at 5% too. So you just change out the 7% to 5 and you get the same numbers.
Okay. I mean, there's more than one way to do it. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay. All right. So once you've got that, all right, everything else below should match. Okay, up to this point. Okay, so just double check, make sure your before tax cash flow in year 5 is matching with the 84,665. If it's not, you've done something wrong. Okay, but it should be matching with those couple little modifications. Okay. All right. Once you've got that, now we skip down to the next section. Okay, so in this section, actually, let's do it right. Okay, so this next section, you should start out with your net operating income. That should be the same, so nothing has changed there. Okay, for depreciation, what I want you to do right now is spend the next 2 or 3 minutes struggling to get these numbers. Okay, it's not that complicated, but I just want to see if you can do it. Okay, just use the basic simple math to figure out what your depreciation is going to be for the first year and for then the subsequent years. The first year is different because of the mid-month convention. Okay, so we're assuming it's bought January of whatever year it is, but for IRS purposes, the half a month, so you really only get 11 and a half months of depreciation for that first year. All right, so see if you can match those numbers. As soon as you've matched, just give me a quick raise of your hand so I know that you've got it. All I wanted to see is a quick raise of the hand. Okay, so only one person's got it so far. Okay. 2 people got it.
So what you do for depreciation?
Okay. That's what I'm asking you to do.
How did you get down, same thing on the sheet? Just trying to catch up.
That's what I'm asking you to do, is to figure out how to get there.
Oh.
Even if you don't get the first year, how do you get the second year? Not with, you two don't need to answer, you already know. So what do you do? Well, you're probably going to need to know this for the test you're going to be taking today, so if you don't know that, you're going to have a problem. Okay, real quick, what is our initial depreciable basis?
$680,000.
And that represents what?
Building cost.
Building costs, because we don't depreciate land, okay? So the 680,000 is our initial depreciable basis, okay? What type of property is this, commercial or residential? Okay, what is the depreciation term for commercial? Okay, so if you take 680,000 divided by 39, you should get 17,435.90, which is the depreciation for years 1 through 5. I'm sorry, 2 through 5. Thank you. Okay, everybody match up? Yes? Okay, so let's start with that. So all I did was simply take cell C4 divided by C5. Okay? C4 is initial depreciable basis divided by C5, which is depreciation term. And I made those a static or fixed cell reference that you can then copy forward to the subsequent years. Okay? Go ahead and copy that forward to the subsequent years. C4 divided by C5. Once again, this is C4, this is C5. Okay? Now, given that the first year we've got the mid-month convention, what do we actually have to do with this amount?
Divided by 5 divided by 12, because it's half.
We can do it. Mathematically, we can accomplish it several different ways, okay? One way is to simply say, all right, we've got 11 and a half months of depreciation that we're going to earn on this particular asset, and out of 12 months possible. So what I did was to simply take the 17,435.90 and multiply it by, open parentheses, 11 and a half divided by 12. Does that make sense? Okay, so if you look at my cell references for that first year, okay, you see what I did? Just the C4 divided by C5 stays the same, except I do put it in parentheses to ensure that everything sort of is algebraically is done appropriately, times the 11 and a half divided by 12. Okay? Make sense? Okay? All right, moving forward. Now, once you've got that, once again, everything else should be the same all the way down to here, okay? So our tax due, in this case, you should match up with the 15,839.77 in the first year and the 23,768.70 for the fifth year, okay, in terms of tax due. All right, now, now, the one thing that they did in this particular example, it's a little bit different. And you can choose to do this or not. In the year of the sale, and we did not do this in the previous example. The previous example, they didn't ask you to calculate anything related to the sale, okay? They only said calculate kind of what the participation payment's going to be, calculate, you know, all of this sort of, you know, the other stuff. But take a note at what exists in the final year of depreciation in the handout. And this is not the mistake, by the way. okay?
That was one
So what they did was they used the same number that they had up here for year one. Didn't they? Okay? Now, this is a finer point that we did not discuss in class, okay? In the year of the sale of an asset, you typically will say, if it is sold, let's say in December the 31st of that year, you apply the mid-month convention to the sale year as well. So that in essence, you only get 11 and a half months of depreciation in the final year. Okay? Does that make sense? In other words, to be consistent, if you will, with the IRS tax policy. Okay, so you apply the mid-month convention at the time of the purchase, and you apply it at the time of the sale. Okay? So by doing so, we would simply need to go in here, modify this one, just like basically, or just we can copy over from the first one, either way. But we're just going to multiply that by 11 and a half divided by 12 so that we match up there. Okay? So now, once again, if you're looking at the sheet that you were given with kind of a solution out there, we have the 16,709 now as that depreciation amount, and then we come down to the tax due of the 23,972.12, and we match up with that, okay? And then this is where we then go off the reservation, okay? Or the problem went off the reservation. All right, so all of this is now correct up to this point, okay? Everybody matching? Yes? Okay. Okay, this is where the mistake lies, in this final calculation. Okay, so first of all, okay, you should match up with me in terms of the before tax cash flow of the 60,770 all the way across to the 84,000 665. All right. You should also match up with me in terms of the less tax due, all the way across to the 23,972. Now, and you're going to match up with me, but you're not going to match up with the solution, okay, for the after-tax cash flow. Now, my question to you is, what did they do wrong in the solution? Why is my number 44,930, their number for after-tax cash flow is 40,731?
They reference the taxable income rather than before.
Yes. Common mistake. And I think pointed that out whenever we did the lecture on this. All right, so let's just show side by side what they did and what their mistake was. Okay. All right, before tax cash flow, we've got that as 60,770. We'll keep that. All right. And over here, let's say that we've got the same thing, 60,770. Okay. Example, let's say A, example B. All right. Then we have the taxable income. Which they've got as 56,570. All right, and then we've got the tax due of 15,839 or 840 rounded. So what you should do is you should take the before tax cash flow, subtract out the tax due in order to get our after-tax cash flow, in this case of the $44,930. What they did was they took the taxable income and subtracted out the tax due, which gave them the $40,731. Okay, does that make sense? Because if you remember, in order to get your after-tax cash flow, you are not just using your taxable income minus your tax due. The reason you don't use your taxable income to subtract from is because that taxable income calculation contains some non-cash expenditures, specifically depreciation and just the interest on the mortgage, not the full dollar amount of the mortgage. This is all being done to simply calculate the taxable income for the tax subroutine, and you apply the tax rate to that to get your tax due, but what you actually subtract your tax due from is your before tax cash flow. Okay, do you remember that whole discussion? Okay, all right, good. Okay, so that gets us down to the after-tax cash flow piece. Now, what I would like for you to do is to now effectively take and complete the rest of the solution, obviously realizing you're going to have a mistake that carries through, okay? Specifically, if you go down to the owner cash flows here, okay, you're seeing that they've got 40,731 for Part B there, the owner cash flows, and then 45. All they're doing is using the after-tax cash flow from above. Okay, well that number's wrong, so you need to use your number, okay, that we've calculated to be the correct number. And then you've also got to calculate the lender cash flows, which are simply going to be what from our previous example?
The payment and the participation.
Correct. Okay, and then you're going to do a couple of little minor calculations and get your internal rate of return. So what I would like for you to do is from now until 8:45, you've got about 12 minutes, is to see how far you can get on this on your own, and then we'll start the test. Okay, so you've got about 12 minutes to work on this. While you're doing that, I'll pass out the answer sheets for the test. If you're not taking the test, just let me know. You taking the test? What do you want? Yep. Let's use a note. Steve, are you taking the test? Okay. I can't see. We blow that up a little bit. Static accelerators each one of those. So start with that. You can use F4, but okay, so once you got that, Yep.
Is there a function to figure out the remaining principal?
Yeah, I mean, you can,
Subtract it.
well, yeah, you can do that, or you can just solve for a future value. 680,000 divided by the 39, multiplied by 11.5 times 12.
Thank you.
Question.
Yep.
Reselling price is 5%. Is that a gross rate per year?
Correct.
So yearly.
Okay, we've got just 2 minutes. Let me explain what I've done up to this point so that you can start to see if you can match it, and then we're going to start the test. Okay, so moving down here, what I did was to start with the sale of the property in year 5, and to get the sale price, you have a growth rate of 5% per year. So what I did was as follows. I took and I added the land value and the building value together, and then multiply that by 1 plus the growth rate of 0.05, close parentheses, raised to the power of 5. Now what that does is that is simply saying, in basic mathematics, is we are multiplying 1.05 times 1.05 times 1.05 times 1.05 times 1.05. So it allows us to then shortcut the actual calculation to get then the appropriate sale price, okay? Everybody with me on that? All right, so once you've got that, then to get the selling expenses, that one's very easy. That one is simply multiplying the sale price times the selling expense percentage, which was whatever it was. I think it was 8%, maybe? Yeah, 8%. All right, so that should give you the 81,682. Then for the mortgage balance, this was the question that you asked, okay? Here, what I did was simply use future value function. All right, it's the same logic that you would employ in time value of money. You're simply solving for the future value, which is your loan balance, and your rate is going to be the interest rate above, which I think was 9%, but the term that you're going to use, or the number of periods, is you want to know the balance after the end of the 5th year. Thus the reason I inserted 5 here, okay, for the number of periods. Then the payment is simply going to be going up and capturing your annual debt service, which in my case was cell C36, comma, then the present value, which is the loan amount, but you've got to put either the payment or the present value as a negative number, preferably in this case the present value, and the reason for that is because that makes then this a positive number, okay? If you put both of them in as positive or both of them in as negative, you're not going to get the same result, okay? So that is the solution for the mortgage balance, okay? Participation payment, okay? Here, all we're doing is we're basically taking what was the sale price of the asset, subtracting out basically the total purchase price, which in my case was land value and building value, and then multiply that by the participation percentage, which was, yeah, 12% it looks like.
Would you figure out the recaptured tax and stuff first, and the lender also saw the benefit of the recapture? Or
That comes in the next step with the tax.
But you're paying him participation without taking into account that you're going to have to.
And you are, but right now, just focus on this. Okay, so at that point, we've got the participation payment. So the last piece, which we don't have time for, is the tax calculation, and we'll pick that up. Okay, all right. Close everything down, put everything away. Let's do this little test. Okay.
Oh, boy.
Should I stay or leave?
What do you want to do, Claudia? You can continue working on it as far as I'm concerned. Put everything away, please. Close computers. Let's close notes. Let's see, you're not taking